So thank you all very much for joining us. We're really excited today to have our partners and friends from the Arboretum here to share some of their experiences dealing with this wild, wild world we're living in. When you think about UC Davis, you might think of world-renowned research, cows, picnic day, beer, wine, but inevitably some point you think of the Arboretum and how magical it is. And I know for myself, Marjorie, and Julianne of the Retiree Center, for us, it's a place right next to our office and a place we can retreat to if we need some quiet time. And we're really excited to talk to our friends from the Arboretum today. Introducing myself, I'm Kyle Urban. I'm the director of the UC Davis Retiree Center, along with my teammates, Julianne Crowley and Marjorie All, who are also on the call. We're doing everything we can to keep you as engaged as possible through a time that no one could really predict. In March, we were in our office and doing everything we could, but we've been remote since then and likely will be through the end of the year. So we're trying to bring as much programming and partnership from around campus to you, and we're always open to new ideas. So make sure to let us know if you need, or if you have any ideas or any people that you'd like to hear speak, and we're happy to work on that for you. So I'm going to start today with just a quick poll for you. And if you're on the Zoom platform, this should show up in the middle. Your first virtual event with the UC Davis Retiree Center. And the second is, do you feel you have a thorough understanding of Zoom and how to use its features for meetings? So I'm going to ask you those two questions quick and let me know if these populate. All right, and the votes are rolling in. So it looks like for the majority of folks attending today, this is your first virtual event with the Retiree Center, and we thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to continuing to do these throughout the course of the year, and I think even when we're back on campus, you'll see us have some virtual reach. And we know that we've got retirees from around the country, as well as internationally, that have been tuning in since we've moved to this direction. And that makes us really, really excited to be able to reach outside of the greater Sacramento area. And we understand that this is something that folks want moving forward. And to those of you that have questions about Zoom and its functionality, there are only a few. We are currently offering Zoom trainings for folks. Marjorie All from our team is actually leading those Zoom trainings, and she talks a little bit about how to use the functionalities that you see on your screen for Zoom right now, but also how to lead your own meetings with family and friends. And so that's a great resource. And if you're interested, reach out to the Retiree Center and we can get you going on that. But without further ado, I wanted to introduce our friend, our Assistant Vice Chancellor and Director of the Arboretum and Public Gardens, Kathleen Sokolowski. And Kathleen and her team will lead today's session, and I will kick it over to her.
Thank you, Kyle. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Carmia, are you gonna put the slide up? Great. Well, welcome everyone. It's so exciting to be here today. When Kyle first asked us to consider giving a presentation to the Retiree Center, we were in the midst of 24/7 confusion and new Zoom meetings and all kinds of issues. So he was kind enough to let us wait until we had a little bit more perspective. So I'm happy to say after 5 months of this, we are able to look more clearly at what's been happening and how we've been responding. And we're able to actually start to see some opportunities for growth within this. One of my favorite quotes is from Einstein. It's out of difficulty grows opportunity. So that's what we're focusing on, the opportunities. And we have a group of us here today, and we'll just introduce ourselves in a kind of rolling fashion as we move along. So as you see from this slide, we were in the midst of just a beautiful spring. The Arboretum was coming to life. We were looking forward to so many opportunities. Our plant sales were just a few days away. So you see our plant sale flyer there. It said March 14th. Well, 3 days before that, we had to cancel the plant sale. And we had varying degrees of understanding about how long this would be. From my experience, I thought it might be the whole spring season, but there were people on our staff who were thinking maybe it's only a week. We just didn't know. And so we canceled the March plant sale. And during this time. So that's one thing about nature. It didn't stop for the pandemic. So once we began sheltering at home, it was really interesting because we were responsible for a place that we really couldn't go to. Immediately, people started pouring out. Nature is so restorative. And as Kyle said, it's a retreat for people. It looked like a national park. And I was watching the news, seeing this all over the country. I saw beaches in Florida. I almost felt like a mayor of a beach in Florida that people were just flocking to. Also, I saw the news in the Tidal Basin and the Cherry Blossom Festival where they had to bring out the National Guard. So we're having all kinds of conversation with campus leadership. What do we do to keep the Arboretum and Public Garden and the entire campus safe? Do we let visitors come here? You know, how are we going to handle this? Because it seems like it was so important to people. We also had 800 students living on campus, so it's difficult to think about actually closing down. So we kept pondering this. I live downtown in a townhome, and so on my exercise route, I could go over to the Arboretum, and I was very nervous. I was taking pictures and bringing back the information to our team. So then I found weddings happening. People had all kinds of setups for how they were going to continue their life despite this pandemic. So this is a wedding I came upon in the Redwood Grove. And it, you know, was just hard. At the same time, kind of a bittersweet moment for me as director of the Arboretum because I saw how much it meant to people. But we still had to know what to do. So the next thing we noticed is that our neighbors were posting signs. This was all within a few-day period. And so here's a sign that our neighbors put up that just really started to tell people to social distance and to practice safe to have safe practices. And I came upon this one morning when I was walking in the Arboretum just to do my checking of the social distancing, and the police were there. The neighbors had called the police, and the police didn't really know what to do. How do you manage this? So we brought this information back to our team, and we started working on a full protocol. UC Davis decided that we were going to try to stay open, that with our information about UC Davis health, our expertise in that area, we could find a way to make it safe for people to social distance, wear masks. At that point, they weren't talking about masks, but we thought we could find a way to make it safe. We started working with Harvard and the Arnold Arboretum because they saw our signs online and they asked if they could use our signs. Because at this time, only 4% of public gardens around the country were open. So there were about 7 of us who had regular Zoom calls every week, if not more often, to say, how do we stay open safely? And between UC Davis Health and Harvard Health, Public Health, we had quite a bit of resource to pull on. So the funny thing is, you see the green sign there, that's Harvard Arnold Arboretum sign. And that's the sign when they took our information and they evolved it to match our signs. I have an interesting story there. Some of you might know Bob Seeger, who's the campus planner. His son is a resident in a hospital in neurosurgery right near the Arnold Arboretum. And he wrote his dad and said, thank you so much to UC Davis for keeping the Arboretum open. It is my saving grace. I go there after every round. I exercise there. So we had this little group of public gardens that had found a way to grow our role as a public garden and be open during this time. Just as an aside, during 9/11, when the whole country was in shock, almost all the public gardens in the United States opened for free. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden, people poured out to commune in nature, to deal with their grief. And this was the opposite situation, which all of the public gardens, almost all of them are locked down. So we had a unique opportunity to figure out how to stay open safely. But it was a journey. So I'll show you some more slides quickly about that journey. We worked with a campus to put out hand washing stations at all the major entrances. These were also by the dining halls and by other places where the students who were living on campus were. Next. We also had to up our ante. We got taps to loan us. On the left, you'll see a COVID-19 stay, 6 feet apart. The 6 doesn't show, but we just put that right in your face as you entered the Arboretum. We also put it in the Buda Creek Riparian Reserve. Now it's interesting, most people were really happy that we did this. We got a few biking aficionados from Davis who said it was blocking their path of travel for their bikes. But we did it anyway because we really wanted to show everyone, our members, our visitors, our campus community, that we were serious about this. At the same time, UC Davis started giving information about wearing masks. And then look what happened. I went out on my patrol, my exercise patrol, and all of a sudden I saw this happening. People were social distancing. They were joining together and starting to enjoy the Arboretum in a responsible way. Next. But unintended consequence. People decided it was the best place to picnic. So you imagine downtown Davis, only thing open is pickup dinners. You can get takeout. So where was everyone going? To the Arboretum to eat their food. And it was really glorious. Looked like old-fashioned times, picnic blankets, coolers, everything you can imagine. But then all of a sudden we had a huge trash problem. And at this point, we didn't really know how dangerous it would be for people to pick up trash, exactly how the virus might come from the trash. So we had this idea of bringing in trailers. So at all the major places, we brought in trailers so that the person picking up the trash just could cart it off without touching the trash. We put out signs. So anyway, the Arboretum was almost being loved to death, but at the same time, we were able to find a way to work around that. Next. Another thing we were concerned about, this is Emily Griswold, our head of horticulture, is how to keep our outdoor workers safe. For those of you who don't know, the Arboretum and Public Garden includes all of the grounds division too. So collectively, for our 5,300 acres of the campus, we have about 70 outdoor workers, from groundskeepers to laborers to people who mow the athletic fields to people who sweep the streets. So we came up with this idea of putting this sign, "Stay 6 feet away," on the vest of every employee who's having to go outside, because we really wanted them to feel like we were taking their safety seriously. We wanted to remind the people who saw them and remind the people who were wearing them. This was an interesting experience. It just is really weird to think about. I hadn't seen one single staff person in person since this whole thing began. Everything I'm talking about was done virtually. Emily would go in and put the signs out, but I was walking in my neighborhood downtown and I saw Emily and I was so surprised. There was a real live person. So she and I shared this moment. So next we continued that. We shared that with Harvard. They liked it so much, they actually made t-shirts that says, "Stay 10 feet back." And this is the director's wife at Harvard, and so they're sharing their t-shirts. What's interesting is that many of the public gardens who hadn't stayed open thought we were being really a little bit overboard. You know, they couldn't imagine this, but meanwhile we were open and trying to protect everyone and even just try to enjoy the moment. Okay, next, we have the essential workers from across campus. This could be a whole talk. I won't give it today, but you've heard about this across the country, how people are deemed essential workers. So we wrote reams of documents related to protocol for those doing asset protection and safety management across campus. And I'm happy to say that we've had a very, very compliant group. People feel very safe. And this is one of the groundskeepers who's picking up trash and working the Arboretum with a mask on. There's only one person per vehicle. This is the trailer too, so that he doesn't really have to touch the trash. And so this is just an example of how much emphasis we put on keeping all the workers safe. Next. In addition to keeping people safe, the life moments go on, and you as retirees will appreciate this. We had 2 really consequential retirements going on this year, Chip and John, and collectively they had 65 years of service at UC Davis. So up until this moment, it was still okay for people to be spread out and kind of distance in sort of an event format, but a couple of days before this, it really became clear that wasn't going to work. The head of grounds had planned them to be in the stadium all far apart, and he was going to have a microphone far away. But we pivoted and we came up with an idea for a parade where every single worker was in their own vehicle. There was everything from gators to a boom truck to street sweepers to bicycles. So everyone came in a parade. They paraded across campus in their individual carts. They decorated them. They had noisemakers, and they went all the way around the stadium. And Chip and John were at the stadium and got to wave to everyone, and then they went back. And the funny thing about this, it just brought tears to my eyes, but the funny thing was a lot of the grounds workers told the head of grounds they way preferred this to having him give a talk. So anyway, this became our new way to celebrate milestones despite the pandemic. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that during this time, it became evident, as it was with 911, about how important botanical gardens are for people's health and both their physical health and their mental health. And so this was an article in the Washington Post that I wanted to call your attention to. And like I said, the difference here is that only 4% of public gardens were open during this versus during 911 when they all opened their doors. And so it just reminds us how important botanical gardens are, and then creating the whole campus as a public garden and how important that is for the future. So there's some opportunities in this. First of all, there's an opportunity for us to commit even more to making all of the campus nature accessible to the public. And I want to say that we've purposely not invited visitation during this time because we understand the vulnerability that is associated with that. But we will say that if you go to our website and you feel comfortable that you could exercise and physical distance and wear a mask in the Arboretum, there are directions on our website for how to experience the Arboretum safely. So that's up to you. We're not inviting visitors, but we are not turning them away either. So check out our website for more information on that. Also, we realize there's an opportunity to share this case study nationally. And I've joined Harvard and a few of the other public gardens around the country in presenting nationally to our group on how to take measures to keep your public garden open. So it's really been a gauntlet to kind of pass through. It's been a challenge, but that's another opportunity, is to share our story. And we're still learning, the story continues. And the third opportunity is to really think of the whole campus as a place for the future, not just for COVID, but as nature becomes even more threatened with climate change. So we're thinking, what can we do? Our new provost is an epidemiologist and a public health official, and she reminded all of us that the outside is 20 times safer than inside. So she's really called on us to think, as we imagine slowly opening the campus back up, how can we use the outside for studies, for dining, for recreating, for mental health, and for teaching. So I wanted to show you one last slide. This was taken yesterday. The vet school is holding classes outside next to the Arboretum's public teaching nursery. This was a picture. You can't see it too well, but there were a group of vet students all in there. There's some cameras out there taking pictures. And just so you know, there are 3 schools at UC Davis that have an exception for teaching during the pandemic. They're all health schools. The vet school can teach during the pandemic, the School of Nursing, and the Med Center. So we have been partnering with these entities, since we are really responsible for the whole campus, on how we can set up these teaching spaces and make them safe. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Andrew Fulks, who's our assistant director, and he really manages all the place and the environment. So Andrew, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kathleen, and thanks everyone. So yeah, this is a little different because Carmi is controlling a slide, so I guess she can control how fast I go. So when I see a slide move, it means move along, Andrew. So yes, I'm Andrew Fulks, one of the assistant directors here at the Arboretum, dealing largely with the place. And one of the impacts and opportunities, as you'll see, and needs to pivot happened related to projects, right? Life doesn't necessarily stop even when it seems like everything is stopped. And so we had a number of projects that were both in progress happening when basically the lockdown occurred, as well as projects that were in the planning phase. And each of these required a little bit different approach to managing it during a time of COVID. Some with pivots and some with actually slight benefits. Didn't really see much downside, believe it or not, because we were able to adapt so quickly. So one of the examples is the Mary Wattis Brown path. We've been wanting to replace the old asphalt path. It was not universally accessible. It had potholes in it. And this was under construction when the lockdown occurred. And because even though, as Kathleen said, we had a lot of increased visitation, we didn't have the volume of people at the particular times like you do with the student passing periods, when 30,000 people have to suddenly shift to the left. So because of that, because of a slight decrease in the amount of actual people on campus, we found a number of our construction projects went a little faster. We didn't have to break because suddenly the road's packed with everyone moving around. And so Mary Wattis Brown, we were actually able to complete a little ahead of schedule, even during COVID. The contractors are considered essential workers. People were masked up, they were distancing, and they were continuing to work on a lot of these projects. So Carmina, I want to go to the next slide. And here's the completed path, which is one of those things that we love when people haven't been at a place for a while and they return and they say, wow, what happened? Look at this. And for those that really know the Arboretum, this is quite a difference, And now the path is universally accessible along the length of the redesigned section. There was a big dip and curve that used to occur just beyond this that we modified, so it's now under 5%. And no more potholes, the drainage is fixed, and we even got a little bit more planting space on the edges of the path, which you'll see us filling in, as well as a universally accessible ramp and a new staircase, which sort of keep some of the speeding bicycles from zooming down from environmental work. So this is an example of one that was under construction when we started with the lockdown. So Carmia, can you go to the next one, please? And the LaRue Bridge, another one that was in progress and is definitely critical infrastructure. This one impacts the Arboretum quite a bit because the bridge is widening, but we also have new paths going in that we'll access from the roadway up on top down below to the Arboretum paths. The paths in this section with the old bridge were pretty beat up. The access was definitely not universally accessible with some extremely steep slopes. And those are going to be modified to universally accessible ramps with 5% and under grades and staircases in those areas that are more steep. So the entire length of this section will now be wheelchair accessible. So why don't you go to the next one, Carmia, and look at a rendering of what it will look like. You can see the new wider paths going under the bridge. They were fairly narrow under there before with not really good sight lines. If you had somebody coming on a bicycle or roller skating or something, they could whip around those corners and into folks. Now you'll be able to see the length along there. And also there'll be sidewalks along both sides. Historically, there was only on one side, fairly narrow and not separated from the cars. Now you'll be able to stop, look down the waterway, and particularly as we start reimagining the waterway project, and then connecting to the lower paths with gently sloping ramps. So Maria, can you go to the next one? And here's one, this was under construction at the time. We've completed the section, it's not open yet, but you can see the rock walls that we're using as kind of a motif along sections of the Arboretum whenever we have to hold up embankments, try to go with a more natural material, and a nice sinuous path that goes through the conifer collection, which connects you up to LaRue. Historically, it was a very steep ramp, and now we've got one that's going to be 5%. All right, to the next one, please. And also partnering with the vet school, the thing that we found during the pandemic, it's not just the Arboretum proper that was receiving visitation, but areas adjacent to the Arboretum, including the animal pens and the animal pastures. The Sacramento Zoo was closed. And we had folks coming and saying, well, this is the only zoo that's open. And they're referring to UC Davis. And so we partnered with the school to let folks know what's going on inside these animal pens. So we worked with them on creating some interpretive signs about why the animals are here and the good that the animals do. This one says, meet the heroes, the horse blood donors. And so we have these for each of the pens that have different animals in them. We've got llamas, we've got goats. And Carmia, can you go to the next one, please? You see families started coming out. This is just a handful of what we're seeing. People are saying, where do we take the kids? Well, they're coming to the Arboretum, and then they're going to go see the animals. And we designed this large animal support facility in concert with the vet school because it's right adjacent to the Arboretum. And we consider it sort of part of the Arboretum. You can see the Oak Grove, the internationally renowned Oak Grove collection in the background. The Storer Garden is just off to the left, where folks are standing and looking out into the pens, and designed it so the shade structure is not just for the horses. You can see the horse under the structure there, but the people as well. We're trying to bring the people to the animals and tell the story of why they're there and tell the story of the school. So it's another example of how we're integrating what we do across campus. And in a time of COVID, this is when we developed the signs with the vet school because we had all these visitors and they're saying, why are these animals here? Why are they next to the Arboretum? Why do you have animals now? Are you a zoo now? And so now we're telling the story of the vet school in concert with the Arboretum. Okay, if you go to the next one, please. And one of the main pivots we had to do for projects in progress, no more site visits, right? We're not out there with the consultants in the field, inside conference table, huddled around doing sketches. So everything became remote and digital. And we actually were able to do a fairly good pivot, I think, on this. In fact, in some ways, I think it was a little bit more interactive than it would have been because we were all playing with the workboard and the white space when doing these reviews. So this one's the Mary Elizabeth Wolfe Environmental Education Center that is in the planning process. And when COVID hit, we were in the planning process for this, but we were having in-person meetings and going over floor plans, and then everything pivoted to digital. And we were doing all of our work, in real time, on Zoom, online, modifying the floor plan, moving things around. You can see kind of the blue highlights there are where we were discussing some of the features within the break room, and we were modifying them and moving them in real time with the architects, and came up with a plan for this environmental education center, which once COVID passes, and we know it will, which ironically enough, and probably the estimated time that it will pass is about the construction time that it will take for this to happen. So hopefully we have sort of a grand opening and grand leaving of the house, right? So if you can go to the next one, Carmia, we can show the rendering of what we're expecting this to look like. And this will be at the Arboretum Teaching Nursery right now, which is housing sort of an old tough shed, which is the office for our staff out there. This will take up some of that space and some of the shipping container space that we have out there, and form the environmental classroom, a break room, a place where we can use that break room as a kitchen space for hosting events that are happening out in the DG areas or within the classroom space, and office space for our staff that are out there, as well as our student learning by leading program. We really see this as kind of the hub of the program, the maker space of the program, if you will. And, we designed this because we are an outdoors group, right? We love the outdoors. We wanted our building to reflect that. And so you'll notice sort of on the left, we see these large open wall panels here. This is one of the options we're looking at is nano walls. But even if we don't do that, we've got a set of double doors on all sides. When you open this up, it will be like a big flowing pavilion. So the idea was to have lots of air volume, lots of air movement, even before COVID hit. And then looking at what the UC Davis researchers are talking about with indoor spaces, that is really what they recommend, is being able to have lots of volume of airflow, natural air from the outside. So we were kind of ahead of the game on this. And so this is still in the planning phases, but we've finalized the floor plans, and we expect to go out to bid, I would think, in a couple months, actually, at this point. So Crimea, can you hit the next slide, please? And along the lines of planning, Wyatt Deck, one of the really sacred spaces on campus. You see that light fixture there. That's really indicative of sort of a 1960s architecture that Dean Unger, the architect for this and builder for this, designed back then, and did a lot of Bay Area buildings and Palo Alto area. And you'll find things from that era. I grew up in that area, so I remember the library had these kinds of craftsman style, arts and crafts style fixtures from that era, all built in redwood. And so we've got a lot of these, this interesting history of this deck, but the deck itself is pretty weathered, pretty old. We've got fascia boards that are coming off. There's boards that are rotting. It doesn't meet universal access. And in order to continue that pathway that we have at Mary Wattis Brown to make a universally accessible, handicap accessible path along the entire length of the Arboretum, we need to figure out a way to redesign this. So we took this opportunity to start doing the planning for the redesign of Wyatt Deck. And here you can see a construction schematic of the idea that we've come up with, that we're working with a team of landscape architects and engineers, all holding these things virtually to come up with this program to redo the Wyatt Deck. And in redoing it, we're actually going to split the deck sort of in two with a path. The yellow brick road path at the 5% grade will wind its way through the trees, saving all of the trees that are out there, all the big redwoods, winding around through there and just slightly reorienting the middle deck just below the patio. Staircase will remain that same kind of grand staircase that we have, and there'll be a lower deck just off of the path, and then a universally accessible ramp to replace the existing very steep ramp, the asphalt ramp out there that will come up to Arboretum Drive. And all of this we were able to do with the landscape architects and civil engineers virtually, because historically we had actually had Google come onto campus and walk around with their backpacks to do street view. And so they had walked Arboretum Drive and walked all of the Arboretum paths. And so we were able to do a virtual site walkthrough, to look at all the existing conditions and zoom in and say, oh yeah, that's that section of wood that's rotting over there. That's that section over there that, you know, we need to replace. So there's the existing light feature, without actually having to go in the field with the architects and engineers. And we're able to come up with this design, do the engineering work to make sure that it worked. And with this project, using our job order contractor, we're looking at probably starting construction on this sometime this fall. All right, so I think is that the next slide to you, Carmia? Yes, so with that, I'd like to introduce Carmia Feldman, who's another assistant director here at the Arboretum. The two of us kind of share the assistant directorial duties with Carmia, very much focused on the programmatic elements and the public and student outreach portions that we do at the Arboretum. So take it away, Carmia.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew. So just as you can see, we were really grappling with what opportunities, what challenges we were having with the place, with the physical place of the Arboretum and Public Garden. We were also grappling with that for our programs. So everything that we do basically is in person. We're all about being in person, being in nature, being in the gardens, having that experiential access to our place, and all of that changed. So just as it changed with the place, boom, it changed with the program. So then we had to really think about, the opportunity to grow our programs virtually. So here you can see our staff members who, all of our program staff members were sent home. Everybody set up their home office, and we began to do, just like everybody else, have our virtual meetings, and really had to think how, what can we do to continue the programs in this, in a completely different way than we had been doing. And one of our top initiatives that we have at the Arboretum and Public Garden is our student program that's called Learning by Leading. And this program is an experiential, hands-on, in-person internship with over 100 students doing projects in the gardens, doing restoration projects, doing environmental education programs in the place. And all of a sudden, just like everyone else, we had to make some very hard decisions. What were we going to do with this incredibly important program? And many groups had to make the decision to stop their internships and stop their student job programs. They just couldn't figure out a way to make them work on such short notice. The lockdown happened, and immediately people had to make decisions. And that lockdown happened very close to the end of winter quarter. So we had about a week to make that decision. And we decided that we were going to find a way to continue the program for our students. And so first I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program, and then I'll tell you how we pivoted. So the Learning by Leading program really aligns well with the Chancellor's strategic plan for UC Davis. And the #1 goal of that strategic plan, which is called To Boldly Go, is to prepare students to address the challenges of a changing world. So our students, like I said, are working on issues like climate change, habitat loss, biodiversity, sustainability, food insecurity, and environmental literacy. And they're on the ground, hands-on, doing programs with our staff, with community groups, with other campus partners to do this. And we just felt like it was really important that we find a way to continue this. In the program, our philosophy is that people learn best by leading. And so we have a leadership ladder where the students go from being learners to participants to leaders as they move up this ladder. And as they stay in the program, they take on more and more responsibilities, more leadership opportunities. And many of our students stay in the program for multiple quarters and even multiple years, because they feel like they can get more and more experience as they go through, and more different kinds of experiences. So we have actually currently about 13 teams of students, and they're all organized in this structure where they have a staff person who's a mentor, and that staff person works very closely with 2 student leaders who we call co-coordinators. And those co-coordinators mentor a team of interns. And the ones pictured here are our waterway stewardship team, working with Nina Suzuki, our waterway steward staff person. And like I said, we had over 100 students. We had over 130 students this year in the program in fall and winter. But then just like everybody else, oh, before that, this is an example of our Sustainable Horticulture Learning by Leading team. On the right, you see the 2 co-coordinators, the student leaders, are leading a training of community volunteers and students learning how to plant drought-tolerant and pollinator plants in an area near the School of Veterinary Medicine. So they really take on those leadership roles of planning the gardens, they design them, they go through design charrettes, just like you would in the real world if you were a landscape architect, and then they source the plants, they learn how to do the irrigation, they plant the plants, and then they take care of the gardens afterwards. And often they help interpret the gardens for visitors too. So then we had to make the decision, just like everyone else, that whether we were going to continue this for spring quarter. And what we decided in about a week of time is that we were going to turn our hands-on internship into a virtual leadership internship. And so we did that pivot. You can see Maya Macker there on the upper left corner is our staff mentor for the museum education team with her students starting her Zoom meetings and figuring out, what were the teams going to focus on now in this virtual world. They couldn't do programs outside. They couldn't be in the gardens outside. So what were they going to do? And what we had been, one of the things we'd been working on, as Kathleen mentioned, and I think Andrew mentioned too, is this idea of how nature is a healing space, and you can get health and mental and physical health benefits from spending time in nature. So we had already been working on this and doing programs around this, but when we thought about, what does the world need from us right now in this pandemic? People need a way to connect to nature. Even if it's virtual, studies have shown that a connection to nature really does have health benefits. And so that was going to be our overarching goal for our virtual leadership internship. How could we help people continue to have that connection to nature and reap those benefits in a time of self-isolation where it was needed even more? Some of our students turned to creating virtual activities. So whether people were going to be able to access the Arboretum in person or most likely just on their computer, they wanted to have activities that people could do also with their children, to have a way to connect to the Arboretum and to learn about the plants and animals and really experience the beauty and healing properties of that space. So on our website now, we have this new area of virtual activities. We have quite a few virtual activities you can see on our website and experience. We have some podcasts that students created and other ways to still connect with the Arboretum. So one of the things that we do every year with our Learning by Leading students is we have a party at the end of the year to celebrate, to blow off steam. There's music, there's games, there's speeches, and it's just a wonderful kind of festival atmosphere. But as you all know, something happened close to the end of the quarter with all of the issues surrounding police brutality and the protests that happened really about 2 weeks before the end of the quarter, right before our party that we were going to have. We were going to have a virtual party. And so nobody was in the mood for a party at that point. Everyone was upset, sad, depressed, scared, all of those emotions. And we thought about canceling that event, but we realized we did not want the students to miss out on getting to celebrate in some way all that they had accomplished. They had come through this time. And I forgot to mention that when we made this pivot, we didn't know how many students were going to continue in the program. And when we polled them, over 110 students continued with us in our virtual program. So the vast majority of students continued, even in this very different way. And so we felt like we really needed to appreciate that. So we turned our party into an appreciation gathering, and many students attended, and it was a lovely time for us to just say how much we appreciated them, how wonderful they had been throughout the quarter, and celebrate all of their accomplishments. So we didn't totally know how the students would react to this. We did an activity where we asked them to electronically submit 3 words to describe their experience with the Learning by Leading program for that quarter. And we didn't really know what kind of words they were going to submit, given the state of the world, the double whammy of the pandemic and the protests going on. But what we found is this was really a bright spot in their lives and their spring quarter. And they felt that it was inspiring, it was meaningful, it was healing to them. They felt that they got the healing benefits of nature too. It was rewarding. They kept up their friendships. It really was a support system for them during this time. So this just warmed our hearts too, because our staff felt like that. For themselves as well, getting to continue the relationships that they had with the students and feel like they were working on something important through this time. So another opportunity that we had during the shutdown is we were able to turn our attention to some of the things that we hadn't had enough time to do in our normal life. And that was to really build more connections with some of the other units on campus that we had started conversations with, we had started working with them, but we were really able to build those connections. And one of the groups that we've been working with is in UC Davis Global Affairs. They have a program called Global Education for All. And the idea behind that is they want every UC Davis student to have experiences that build their ability to be global citizens. So whether it is in another country, whether they're actually international, or if they're at UC Davis, they can still have global experiences and work on global issues. And the Learning by Leading program really ties in well with this because students are working on those issues that really are global. They're doing it at UC Davis, but then they're also taking their experiences out into their communities, into their careers, and as they go forward. And we're working with them to identify UN Sustainable Development Goals, and these Sustainable Development Goals like climate action and terrestrial systems really tie into what we're doing at the Arboretum and Public Garden. And at the end of the quarter, we were asking our students for testimonials about their experiences, and we just got some beautiful quotes from students about how meaningful they felt their work was with Learning by Leading. And so this student, Cameron Long, is a co-coordinator for the Sustainable Horticulture team in Learning by Leading. And he really spoke to how they're working on these global issues of air quality, biodiversity, carbon sequestration, and ecosystem services. And then also the fact that just that interaction with nature is giving people that boost to their well-being. So we are really working to make those global connections with those issues even more explicit in the program. Another group that we're working with on campus is the Internship and Career Center, and they have an initiative called Aggie Launch. And the idea behind Aggie Launch is to help UC Davis students prepare for global careers, for meaningful and careers that will help them be successful in life, because they found that the careers that students have right after graduation are incredibly important to their long-term career well-being. And we believe building global citizens also helps their career trajectory. And so Karen Utsumi is one of our co-coordinators for the Waterway Stewardship team. You saw her picture earlier. And she spoke eloquently about how learning by leading is really helping students with their career trajectory, and how she feels that learning by leading alumni are going to make a difference as they leave UC Davis. So we're very excited to be working with Aggie Launch. Aggie Launch is actually a big idea as part of the UC Davis comprehensive campaign. So we're thrilled to be connecting with them as we go forward into the campaign. So another opportunity and challenge that we had is, of course, you know, we've been a portal for community engagement, but of course, our way of doing that is having people be physically at UC Davis in our gardens, and of course we had to change that. And so right now I'd like to introduce Ann Daniel, who's the president of our Friends of the UC Davis Arboretum and Public Garden, and she's going to talk a little bit about how we pivoted that community engagement through the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Carmia. It's a pleasure to be with everyone this morning. And I thank you for this opportunity. I think that through all the demonstration of the earlier speakers and the photographs, we've seen how valuable the Arboretum has been during this difficult time, and how much it is of value to the community as a whole. And certainly we've demonstrated the restorative value of the Arboretum and what it has meant to people. So I think that we really are certainly better when we work together and participate as a community. That first photograph that was just up is the team that takes care of the hummingbird garden. So that's a team of volunteers. There are approximately 300 volunteers that work within the Arboretum, and teams of about 20 that throughout the Arboretum, helping the staff, horticulturalists, take care of the Arboretum. Volunteers also work as propagators for the plant sales. They work as they take care of and assist with the curatorial staff, and taking care of our living museum and keeping the records for that. So I think that volunteers make a tremendous difference, and the value to our community, and we couldn't do it without the volunteers and the association with the greater community. Approximately 26,000 volunteer hours are contributed a year, which results in over $700,000 if we had to pay. The cost of that would be $700,000 if those volunteer hours had to be paid for. So it's really, it's been a wonderful thing for the volunteers to participate. But then all of a sudden in March, we had this, pause and shutdown, and the volunteers felt incredibly disconnected. I can't tell you how important these programs are and the teamwork that goes into the volunteers, and everyone feels that they are responsible for those gardens. They're responsible to each other as a team member, and all of a sudden we were disconnected. And so we, as with everything else, we tried to come up with virtual ways to stay connected. Carmia, can you shift to the next slide?
Can you see that, Ann?
I'm seeing the volunteer group in the Oak Grove, I think, at the west end. So yeah, Here we go. Okay, so when we shifted to virtual activities, trying to apply new technologies, one of the things that we were able to do was create virtual snacks. So that photograph that was just before was a snack time. So as you can imagine, these 3-hour volunteer sessions, the snack that comes sort of midway is really important. And that's a point in time when people are able to talk among themselves, to share ideas, to really become good bonding experiences. So we implemented virtual snack time. So here is another sort of example of Slack, which is a collaborative application where people can share ideas and share information. So at the top of the screen, you're seeing a Slack conversation. And then at the bottom, you're seeing a Zoom virtual snack time. So I think that we really understood that our volunteers were disconnected and wanted to stay connected and understand what was going on and stay connected to each other. So we implemented these various things. And then in addition, we started a volunteer newsletter. This was a learning experience for the team of volunteers that put this together virtually, having had no experience with these kinds of technologies, but we knew that we wanted to offer learning opportunities and help our volunteers stay connected. So we were able to put out 4 issues of a volunteer newsletter, and that newsletter included, updates on news and what was going on within the volunteer community for the Arboretum. Recipes, because you know how important snack time recipes were. We also shared book ideas, book suggestions through the Naturalist bookshelf. And also volunteers were very eager to share what was going on in their gardens, because we all love plants and care about plants. And this was an opportunity for people to share both in Slack by taking photographs of their garden, but also we had a feature in our newsletter of in our gardens, and several volunteers provided us with photographs and information about their plants, the critters that they were seeing. And one of the things that we also know that our volunteers really want to continue to learn. So one of the features in our newsletter was the sort of backyard scientist. So through that, we were able to have information about birding, macro photography, and other activities. So I think that we really sought ways to stay engaged with our volunteers through these various means. And then also we know that, our community is larger than our volunteers. It's also our, the greater community of of Davis and the area around our community. So the leaflet, which is an electronic publication that's available to members, Friends members, and to volunteers, and to anyone who signs up. So we're really reaching out to the community through this mechanism at this time to make sure that people are aware of the safety precautions and what is necessary to be able to enjoy the Arboretum, have its restorative qualities, and yet stay safe. And so all of these things that we've done were in order to stay connected to our volunteers and to our Friends members, but we know that we need to look forward, that this has been a difficult time for all of us, but we want to plan and look to the future. And the Friends organization, which is the support group that is so critically important to the ongoing success of the Arboretum through their financial contributions, the Friends group will be celebrating 50 years. And so we look forward to your joining us in those celebrations in 2021. And we are planning all kinds of activities to reach out and engage the community, because we know that the Arboretum has been important in so many people's lives. They've celebrated family events there. We earlier saw the photograph of the wedding. We know that at this challenging time, the Arboretum has been even more important. So we really look forward to engaging with people to help us share their memories with each other. So our activities moving forward, next slide, please. So we will be having a membership drive. We really appreciate all of you that are listening that are probably members, but we encourage you, if you're not, to certainly become a member, to encourage your friends and families to become members, because your membership really does make a difference, and it will benefit the Arboretum and the plans for the future and all the things that, how we have enjoyed the Arboretum through these difficult times. I think we need to show our support for that. And one of the exciting projects that we'll be starting is a memories project, looking at hoping that people and asking people to submit photographs and stories, and we will come up with a format for that. And so please stay tuned for more information about that. But we're really excited about that, because we know that through your stories, we can tell the history of the Arboretum and how the volunteers and the public really have contributed to its success and how much it is loved within this community. So I urge you to stay connected. Please visit our website. There's information there that will help you understand activities and what's going on, and guidance about staying safe and doing the right thing within those public spaces for yourself and for others that are visiting. And I urge you to sign up, as I mentioned earlier, for the e-newsletter, the leaflet. So there are many ways that we can all contribute to making sure that the Arboretum continues to be such a success, and we will continue to build community relationships and recognize the significance of all of those who have made the Arboretum such a beloved spot within the community. So please stay involved, and if you're not involved, please get involved. And we have exciting things ahead, and so I'd like to introduce Suzanne Uhlensvang. Suzanne is the staff member that is the liaison for our work with the Friends organization, and also is involved with many of the public outreach activities. So Suzanne will be talking about some exciting things ahead. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to share a little bit about one particular event, the plant sales. I hope many of you have had a chance to attend one of our community plant sales. They were founded by the Friends and continue to be hosted by the Friends as one of their major fundraising and community building activities. And it's also so tied to our mission of promoting sustainable gardening. So we love the plant sales, and it was very disappointing to know that they were canceled through the spring. For those of you who haven't been to one, they're like a huge festival. Over 800 to 1,500 people usually attend one plant sale over a 4-hour period. So as you can see here, people are elbow to elbow, clamoring for the plants. And we weren't able to sustain that as soon as the campus announced the suspension. So things were canceled in the fall, and then by early summer we could start to see that there's really no safe way for us to hold in-person plant sales for the fall either, and maybe for the foreseeable future. So we at that point started to pivot and think about how else can we make these plants available to people in a safe way. We were able to sustain all of our spring inventory over the summer, and we created a team of staff, really all hands on deck. Almost everybody's been involved in some way to reinvent our plant sales as an online shopping experience. So this was not a small task, because we have over 800 different plant types available for sale. So we had to collect all the pictures and find a platform that we could use to make them available in a really beautiful online shopping experience. So we've been working on that all summer, and we have it almost ready to launch. We're just fine-tuning the last few details about how the curbside pickup will work. So customers will order their plants online, and then they will come with a contactless pickup at the Arboretum Teaching Nursery at a scheduled time, so that we can assure everyone's safety, the students, the staff members, and the customers, and everyone will still have access to all the wonderful plants that they know and love from the Arboretum. So we will be announcing shortly, as soon as we have a final launch date ready. And for the fall, in gratitude to our members and volunteers, we're making these sales available only to members and volunteers. So this is another great reason to consider joining this fall if you aren't already a member, that you'll have access to all of these wonderful, unique plants that are hard to find in other nurseries. So we've been able to pivot and reinvent, and the one benefit is that we'll be able to continue this online store even after we're able to go back to some sort of in-person event. So we'll have multiple ways now for people to access and purchase plants through the nursery. And all the proceeds from these sales go back through the Friends to support the gardens and programs. So it's really a great investment in our mission. So the last thing I wanted to mention was about the comprehensive campaign that UC Davis is in the middle of. They've been in the quiet phases for the last couple of years, but they're ready to do the big splashy public launch on 10/10/20. There will be a fun virtual event that I believe everybody is invited to. If you go search the website, you can find information about that. And it's really pulling the whole community together to support the parts of UC Davis that you love. So the Arboretum and Public Garden has our own piece of that campaign, and we'll be using it to expand our base of supporters, our friends, our volunteers. And we're putting a special emphasis on inviting people to join the Warren G. Roberts Arboretum Legacy Society. And that group is named in honor of our Superintendent Emeritus, Warren Roberts, who many of you know and love. And it honors the people who have made pledges of planned gifts through their estate, or created new named endowments. And we really see that as, galvanizing the future of the Arboretum Public Garden to have a large endowment to carry on forever all the things that we are able to do in the community. So stay tuned for more information about the Arboretum Public Garden, part of that campaign. And I hope that through all of these presentations today, you've been able to see how we've been able to create new opportunities through all these difficult times. So we hope you enjoyed it. And I think we're going to turn it over to questions at this point. So shall I turn it back to Kyle?
That sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Suzanne, Kathleen, and Carmia, and Andrew for your time in presenting to our group. We're really excited that we were able to do this today, and certainly appreciate all the work you put in. And I, for one, can't wait to get back to campus when we're allowed, for work, so that I can wander through some of the new spaces. But folks that are with us today, and Carmia, do you mind actually stopping the screen share temporarily? Folks, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or if you just want to do a hand raise, I can call on you on the screen if you have your video on, or use the raised hand feature on Zoom. Any questions out there? It looks like we had one in the chat from Shirley that wasn't fully answered. She asked some parking questions, which I answered, but she had asked if there's any way to get a hold of Arboretum books and maps, and if so, where would she get a hold of those?
Okay, I can answer that. So we don't have our own store. We often sell, we have a few pieces of merchandise that we sell at the plant sales, and maybe Suzanne can let us know if those will be on the online store too. And we have had things in the UC Davis store, the downtown one. But right now the maps are available online. So that's the best way to get a map, because we stopped filling the kiosks because we didn't want people to be touching things that we couldn't clean. So right now they're not physically out there, but you can download a map. So Suzanne, do you want to add to that?
Sure. We do hope to add some of the Arboretum logo items to the plant sale online store at some point. It may not be part of our initial phase, because right now we're just focused on getting the 800 plants available. We do have totes and hats and other things that eventually should be added to the store. And I don't know if the downtown Aggie store is still open. They did have a very limited selection of Arboretum items as well. So that might be another option.
All right, any other questions? Josephine.
Yes, my question is the Learning by Leading program part of a degree program at UC Davis? I wasn't too clear on that.
Sure. So students can get academic credit in the program. So there are different departments that we partner with, including landscape architecture, the School of Education, and some other units that do give academic credit. So depending on the student's major and the credits that they need to graduate, they can get those. They can get some of those through the program. We do also have a lot of students who don't need the credit and do it on a voluntary basis.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then I think that will do it. We really appreciate everyone attending today, and we ask that you keep your eyes peeled for the recording of this presentation. If you have any friends or family that might be interested in watching, we should be able to get this posted online here within the next week. But for now, we want to thank our friends from the Arboretum, and thank you so much for partnering with us on this. And I know 9 a.m. was an early start, but we appreciate all of you that were able to attend at this time. And we will have it online for the night owls that want to come in and watch it later. So,
thank you all so much for having us.
bye, everybody.